What's up? How y'all doing? Sugmonger. When you see this knife, is your reaction, ooh, or is it, ugh? Because it's probably one or the other. This is the Hogue X5 flipper, right? And the first thing, the reaction that I get honestly from this thing is Klingon, right? It just looks like something a Klingon would be carrying around. Very angular, very squared off. It's very jagged. It's got all the crazy lines to it. But I mean, there are a whole lot of knives with this kind of styling out there. The crazy lines, the curve, the futuristic, the over aggressive design. There is a lot of them out there, but there's not a whole lot of them that are very high quality. There's not a whole lot of them in this actual class of knife. You got the CPM 154, beautiful ground blade. It's an excellently executed knife, right? It's really well done. But it does have a couple drawbacks, so I'll get into what I don't like about it. But there isn't a whole lot of really high quality knives with this type of styling. So I really respect the fact that Hogue made this thing. That they actually came out with this. I really do respect those designers. It's an Alan Olishewicz design. You can see there, CPM 154. Big ass blade. This is a big old blade. It's very aggressive knife, and it is extremely blade heavy. You can see the balance point right here. The balance point is right at the pivot. You see that? It is right on the pivot. All of the weight's up front. You can see there's not a whole lot of aluminum here. It does have it is T6061 T6 aluminum, so it's great construction, but there's not a whole lot of material in the back, and with such a wide, huge blade, all of the weight is up front. But again, you have that really wide, very massive blade, and I'm going to bring in a couple other knives here, right? This is a 757 Vicker from Benchmade, and you can see here, this thing has a really wide blade, right? But in comparison, it doesn't, right? It doesn't even look the same way. This is a Spyderco K2. This is a knife that a lot of people regard as just oversized and unnecessarily large. And you can see here, it's actually a fraction wider than the K2. It's not quite as long, but just a fraction wider. The overall length is 4 inches. The actual blade stock itself is 0.15 inches, and the weight is 5.7 ounces. So it carries great in the pocket as far as being unobtrusive. For the size of knife it does carry nice. There's not a whole lot up top, so you can still get your hand in. Be on this side, you can still get your hand in and manipulate it in there. But I hate this pocket clip. This is one of the worst designed pocket clips I've ever seen. It works amazing if you're wearing slacks. If you have slacks on, it's great, right? Because you can see the knife hangs like this, right? It's hanging down like that. So the only thing making contact with the edge of my pocket is that corner right there. So the pocket clip itself is riding like this in my pocket. If I have slacks on, that pocket's angled up, it actually fits really nice. It is a very deep carry, slides into the side of my pocket. But in jeans, if I'm wearing jeans, it does not work. It actually eats up my jeans like it's made out of G10, or a really solid G10, excuse me. It is actually G10 underneath that pocket clip. You know what I mean? With the hardcore Emerson. It's like I'm pulling an Emerson wave knife out of my pocket, the way that this thing rips up my pocket. And it's just because of how it's actually riding in there. So I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of the fact that it's got this little plate on the end right here for the opposable side. So you can actually switch that pocket clip around, which they give you another pocket clip, because you can obviously can't put this one on the other side to be sticking off a weird angle, but they cover up that little slot. So it's very well executed. And this is one of the only knives that I've ever played with, that I've ever actually experienced, that is louder in closing than opening. Listen to this, right? Open. Here, listen to it close. There's more of a decibels coming off of this thing closing than opening, which is just excellent. When I first pulled this thing out of the box, the detent was aggressive. Honestly, it didn't like to flip. The flipper was just too heavy. There was too much actual pressure pushing down on the flipper. Not too much. Obviously, I could do it, but it was uncomfortable. Playing with it for an extended period would wear into my finger. My finger would hurt after I did this, over something like 50, 60 times. It has broken in, it's worn in since then, but it is still very stiff. It requires a lot of force to get this flipper out, to actually get this blade out. But once it is deployed, the blade does come flying out. It does have an excellent action on that actual side of it. One of the things that I'm not a big fan of this knife, I don't know if you've ever heard the engineering term, but an engineer knows he's done when there's nothing left for him to remove. this knife has a lock, right? And if you read the actual literature from Hogue, this lock is only designed to be actuated in the open position, right? Because it doesn't lock the knife closed. You can still turn the lock on and engage the knife. It's not an actual lock to engage to keep the knife closed. It's a lock to engage or to turn on to actually prevent the knife from closing, right? The reason that that is there is because that button lock, if it wasn't there, is in such a horrible position that a lot of grips with this knife, my finger falls onto that button and I can hit it, I can feel that button, I can push it, it's just in the wrong spot. For being a push button, for having that being the actual locking mechanism there, the reason that this lock is here is because it's necessary. They had to put that there to actually make this overall knife safe for harder use tasks. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be safe. And they would have some incidences of people actually accidentally disengaging this lock somehow, moving their thumb around and moving it in their hand, even in a reverse grip. So you can see here that lock is still covered underneath my palm. So the lock is nice that it is there, but at the same time, that lock is actually necessary. It's not just a nice thing to have. That lock is actually necessary for the functionality of this knife being safe. So that is a negative. That's not actually a good thing on the overall design of the knife. You shouldn't have to add a lock to make your knife safely perform well. That just doesn't seem quite necessary to me. But at the same time, it is well executed. You know what I mean? It does actually work very well. It is a very safe design. Once that lock is engaged, it is there and it does work. So it's not necessarily the biggest attraction on the knife, but it's just a little bit of something that I'm not a very big fan of. As well, it is not comfortable in hand. It's very secure. It's not going to go anywhere, but you can see the amount of material that's the back here. It's very thin, both sections of the back here. So when I give a really good squeeze to it, I give a really good purchase to this thing, it digs into my pinky there, it cuts into my pinky, and then it's got such a heavy sweep, right? There's such a heavy curvature here that my fingers are being crushed together, right? Because as I squeeze, they're wanting to go to the base of this little ridge here, the base of this curvature. And so it feels like it's squeezing my hand together. It's forcing them all down into this little curvature here. So it's really not the most comfortable thing, as well as the back here is very squared off. Any sort of really hardcore push cutting, this little thing kind of gets into the back of your hand here. So it's not the best thing to use for an extended period. I'm never going to want to carve wood with this. It's not something I'm going to pick for hard use tasks. But again, I don't think this knife is really intended for that. This is more of a defensive / conversation piece for just being cool. It's just an awesome knife for the sake of being awesome. It's really not designed to be the hardest use knife. I think that this isn't necessarily something that's trying to take over the market as the overall EDC. Everyone wants this knife. This knife isn't attempting to do that. This is attempting to suit a market that not a whole lot of other quality knife manufacturers have actually attempted to suit. So I really do like the fact that this thing is on the market. I don't know whether or not I'm going to carry it around a whole lot more. If you look at the coating here, you can see there it is, beat up a little bit on the edge there. There's a little bit of carry wear. There's a little bit of carry wear on the pocket clip up front. So that coating holds up okay, not great. You can see the little dinks and dents and things here from my keys beating into it. The blade is crowned, which is beautiful. Excellently executed blade art. Well, nicely executed blade. I'll say that, because with as large of a flats, with as wide of a blade and as large of a flats as this is, this knife should be thinner behind the cutting edge than it actually is. It's not the thinnest behind the cutting edge for this blade profile. I do think that it could be ground a little bit thinner, but with that said, this is one of the only knives I've ever had come out of the box with a near mirror polish edge. That is not my edge. It came out of the box like that. I haven't actually ever sharpened it, and you can see the little bit of deformation there. It did come out of the box like that, but that's all that's there. I have been using this knife. I have been carrying it around, and so the only deformation came out of the box. The use that I've put behind it hasn't actually done anything. It hasn't actually damaged the blade at all. So the overall edge retention, I do think, is at least on par. You can see a little bit of damage on the coating there, a little bit of scrape up on the actual black coating for the blade, but the CPM 154 at least is holding an edge like 154 CM. I'm expecting it to be a little bit better. I don't actually know. I don't have too heavy of an experience with it, which was one of the overall reasons I decided to purchase this knife. Greatly executed, a whole lot of fun. If this thing calls to you, if this is your type of knife, if this, you know what I mean, if this is like your type of thing, then it's great. If it's not your type of thing, then it's probably just something you're going to be like, what the hell does that even exist for? Possibly not everybody, because I'm kind of in the middle. I like it, but I don't really know why. That's a mini Griptilian. And the Spyderco K2 again. Give you a size comparison. That's it. Spyderco X5 flipper, 4-inch, OD green. Y'all have a good one.